Howdy howdy, my name is John, and this video is my July 2021 wrap-up. Normally, I put my flower update at the end of the video because I want to do something a little bit different for this particular video. I'm actually going to go ahead and do the flower update at the beginning. I forgot to mention this while filming, but I will be hosting a live discussion of the Netflix TV show Katla on August 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. This is an 8-episode Icelandic show. A link to the trailer will be included in the description below. The first book I'm going to talk about is Shade of the Tree by Piers. This is a standalone, and it's kind of a supernatural mystery. It was written in 1986, and it's set in Florida. This book follows Josh, a man in about his mid-30s, who has 2 small children following the death of his wife. He has inherited an estate from an estranged uncle of his. On this estate, strange things start to happen, and most of the book covers the events and the investigation of the strange things that are occurring. I didn't really care for about the first 240 pages or so of this novel. It's very slow paced, and it's just not a lot of interesting things that are going on. The last 160 pages, though, I really enjoyed. Had the rest of the novel been as enjoyable as the last 160 pages, I would have given this 4 stars. As it is, it's a 3-star read for me. The next book I'm going to talk about is Beyond Redemption by Michael R. Fletcher. This book was a group read with Steve talks about books and stuff, Stacey's all booked, and Jolene reads. And we all had a live discussion with the author. That was my first live stream, and while it was a bit scary to participate, I did really enjoy it. This book is a grimdark fantasy. According to some surveys, it's one of the darkest of the grimdark subgenre. Because this book is so dark, I struggled to read it. I did really like the world building and the magic system in this one. The magic system is based off of mental illness, and the stronger the mental illness has effect on the person, the stronger their magic. Of course, the downside being is that the closer to insanity they are, the more likely they are to be lost to their insanity. For example, one of the main characters is a pyromaniac, and she has the ability to call down fire. And you see her struggle to maintain her sanity throughout the novel. Because I struggled so much with this novel, I wound up giving it 3 stars. I'm not used to novels that are this dark, and it would have been nice if it would have been broken up a little bit more with humor. There is some humor in this, but really it needed more humor breaks in order for me to really appreciate it. I am planning on reading the sequel to this in August. It's The Mirror's Truth. We will be having another live discussion with that book. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Kite Runner by Khaled Housseini. This book was written shortly after the events of 9/11. It was very popular when it was written. This was the first time I had a chance to read the novel. I also followed along with this one on audio. And the audio really helped because there are a lot of words that are in Farsi that I was able to hear the pronunciation of. This particular book was read by the author. I did enjoy getting a look into Afghan culture. However, I did find the story itself to be rather average. I wound up giving this 4 stars. The story itself is really just a 3-star story, but because it does have that Afghan flavor to it, it does make this novel slightly better than average. The next book I'm going to talk about is Darkness and Light. This is by Paul Thompson and Tonya Carter. This is the first book in the Dragonlance Preludes series. The Preludes series follows the main characters from the Dragonlance Chronicles, starting 5 years before the action of the Chronicles begins. Basically, the group has split up and there are a total of 6 books that follow the various characters. This book follows Sturm and Kitiara. This book is a fun read. The problem with this book is that most of the story centers around an event that really should have been more of a side story. It's enjoyable to read, but I was more interested on other events that are only briefly covered at the end. I gave this book 4 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Naked Sun by Isaac Asimov. This is his second book in his robot series. This book follows the main characters of the first novel, Caves of Steel. This time, they are asked to investigate a murder that happened on another planet, the planet Stellaria. While I'm not the biggest fan of detective mysteries, I did enjoy this one. I gave this one 4 stars. I read The Complete Robot back in December, and there is one short story in here that is a sequel to The Naked Sun. It's called Mirror Image. I saved that short story until after I'd read The Naked Sun. In this short story, the human detective is asked to settle a dispute between 2 mathematicians. This is an enjoyable short story, and I gave it 4 stars. I am planning on doing a review for The Naked Sun, and when I do that review, I'm actually going to reorder my suggested reading list. There's nothing in this book that you really need to read before reading Caves of Steel and The Naked Sun. So I'm going to move this book in its entirety to read afterward. The next book I'm going to talk about is Minimum Wage Magic by Rachael. I first heard about this book on Katya's channel, Katya Read, Write, Create. She read the entire series, this is a trilogy, and she really enjoyed it. This book was a buddy read with Margaret Pinard. I read this book immediately after reading Beyond Redemption. This book really served as a nice palate cleanser from the darkness of Beyond Redemption because this is a light-hearted fantasy adventure. I did have some issues with the writing style in this one, and Margaret and I both agreed that the title is just a little bit misleading. But overall, I did enjoy reading this book. I gave it 4 stars, and Margaret and I really had an enjoyable conversation about the book. The next book I'm going to talk about is Memories Hostage by Margaret Pinard. This book's going to be a little bit awkward to talk about. Back in April, Beth Ann read this book and gave a review for it. Beth Ann enjoyed the book and she gave it 4 stars. Back then, Margaret and I really hadn't started to watch each other's channel yet. More recently, Jeremy Fee has read Margaret's Remnant series and he really enjoyed those. In fact, the second book in the series won Jeremy's June book battle. Between Beth Ann's video on Memories Hostage and Jeremy Fee's review video on Pavio's book, Searching for Marilyn Monroe and Other Stories, later in the month of April, I went ahead and read Pay's book. I enjoyed Pay's book. I talked about it in my April wrap-up. Then in June, I read one of Martha Jones's books, Fast Forward. I gave both of these books 4 stars. Between the reviews of Beth Ann and Jeremy on Margaret's books and my experience with Pay's and Martha's books, I was really expecting this book to be about a 4-star read for me. In Beth Ann's review, she mentioned that this novel did suffer a little bit from first novel syndrome, where, the writing isn't necessarily best in a first novel. That's one reason why I wanted to go ahead and start with Margaret's first novel and just kind of get that one out of the way first. As it turns out, Beth Ann and I had very different reading experiences on this novel. Beth Ann was able to finish the novel in a little over 3 hours, and she said that she couldn't put it down. It took me 6 days to read this, and I was constantly putting it down. The writing style in this novel really kind of clashed with how I like to read. I do like a book with multiple points of view, but every chapter in this book is very short, and most chapters have 2 or 3 points of view. This constant changing of the point of view really interrupted the flow of my reading this novel, and it made it difficult for me to read. It also appears to me that Margaret was trying a little bit too hard to be impressive with her writing. So here's what Margaret did right in this book. This story immediately draws the reader in and sets up the mystery. As the main characters attempt to solve the mystery, the story stays interesting. This book may have been difficult for me to read, but I was never bored by it. The end result is, had this novel been written differently in a style that was more compatible with my reading style, I really would have enjoyed this novel. As it is, I can really only give this novel 3 stars. As a result, this is not a book I would recommend to someone who does not know Margaret. However, most of my audience also watches Margaret's channel, and for those people, if you don't mind starting with what is hopefully her worst novel first, then I would suggest go ahead and picking this one up and reading it. Beth Ann definitely had a much better experience with this book than I did, and you may want to watch her video if you haven't already. I do want to note here that Margaret did not ask me to read this as a condition of the buddy read. This was a decision I made on my own. I did purchase the book myself. I also want to note that I did briefly talk to Margaret about this before making this video. I am planning on reading the rest of Margaret's novels. I just don't know when I'll be able to fit it into my schedule. The last book I want to talk about is The Greatest Generation by Tom Brokow. This book has many short biographies of people who were in their late teens or early 20s during World War II. I wanted to read this book in July for a couple of different reasons. The first being, of course, is July 4th is Independence Day in the U.S. The second, more personal reason is that July 1st of this year marked the 10th anniversary of when my dad passed away. My dad also served during World War II. He was in the U.S. Navy, and he served from 1943 to 1946. Because this book covers so many of his peers, it was a nice look into his world back when he was a teenager and into his early 20s. The book is well written, and I found all of the biographies interesting. Because it has a personal connection for me, I did give this book 5 stars. Last year marked the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. I actually made a video last year to kind of coincide with the end of the war, but I never released it because my channel was just too small at the time and I didn't really feel comfortable releasing it. The video is a little bit of information about my dad and then concludes with me reading a letter he wrote home to mark the end of the war. I'm going to go ahead and end this video with that video. On August 14th, 1945, at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, President Harry Truman announced that the Japanese had agreed to surrender terms, ending the fighting in World War II. This is my dad. 75 years ago, he was 21 years old and serving with the U.S. Navy Seabees in New Caledonia. New Caledonia is about 750 miles east of Australia. Due to the time difference, the end of the war came on August 15th for him, and that evening he wrote the following letter home to his parents. Hello, folks. Need I say much tonight? The war is over. Boy, that sure is great news. We got it at 10 o'clock this morning and were immediately knocked off from work. The whistles blow, horns and the fire sirens let loose, and of course the fellas yelled, screamed, smiled, laughed, cried, and all types other celebrating. We were really a happy bunch. Now when I come home, maybe it will be for good. We had singing in the area by the store led by an army band. I went to the chapel this afternoon and had a few minutes of quietness and prayer of thanksgiving. We have so much to be thankful for. Soon I will be home, and I am praying it will be for good. The letter goes on, but it's not of interest to a general audience. He left New Caledonia in the middle of September and enjoyed a brief visit of Honolulu, Hawaii at the end of September. He arrived in San Francisco in early October. He got to enjoy Thanksgiving at home with his parents and then was stationed in Chicago until the end of April 1946. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.